Joining us now to react to the president's remarks and talk more about other issues is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, thanks for being with us, and thank you for hanging through the president's remarks. We really appreciate it. I know you've got places to go, things to do, and people to see. The president seemed to downplay where we are with the supply chain crisis, saying we look like we're in good shape for the holiday season. You agree or disagree?
No, John, the president is still in denial about what his reckless spending policies have done to our economy. Families all across Arkansas are starting to face painfully tragic choices between paying the mortgage, heating the home, paying for gasoline, buying kids an extra Christmas present or two. That's a direct result of Joe Biden and the Democrats' reckless taxing and spending policy. We've had this pandemic for 2 years. We didn't have this kind of inflation, though, until Joe Biden and the Democrats took office. And he's largely just shifting the blame. He's not trying to come up with answers. He's blaming oil companies or OPEC for high gas prices, for instance. Well, it's Joe Biden who shut down the Keystone Pipeline on his first day in office, who refuses to authorize other pipelines needed to move petroleum products across the country, who's trying to charge oil producers more fees for drilling on federal lands or in federal waters. These are things that are directly contributing to the inflation that is hurting American families.
Not to mention he's offered, and his Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has offered, that the solution to the high gas price situation Americans are dealing with is to buy an electric car for $50,000. I digress. But as far as the words from the president just a few moments ago, looking through my notes, he took on Republicans and said, your party, Senator, would rather your bills go up for the average American family and be higher so that the corporate taxes can be lower and that the rich can pay less. Is that true?
No, Sandra. It's rich that Joe Biden and the Democrats would accuse Republicans of trying to cut taxes for rich people, because the House bill that Joe Biden was speaking about will cut taxes for millionaires with mansions in Democratic states like California and New Jersey and New York. In fact, that's the single biggest expense in their legislation, is cutting taxes for rich mansion owners in places like California. We've been arguing from the very beginning of this year that if the Democrats are going to spend trillions of dollars in new government programs, at the same time, they are shutting down production in this country by paying people not to work earlier this year, or now imposing these needless and constitutional vaccine mandates on workers across the country. The inevitable effect is going to be the inflation we see now, and it's America's families who are suffering from these Democratic policies.
Senator, this week the Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that inflationary pressures will persist well into the new year. The president, though, seems to suggest that all you need to do to combat inflation is to pass his reconciliation bill, adding, he said, nothing will be more expensive for American families than a no vote on the reconciliation bill. That would seem to fly in the face of what Republicans are saying, that passing the reconciliation bill will only add to inflationary pressures.
Well, let's remember, John, that Joe Biden and the Democrats have been advocating their trillion-dollar spending bill well before inflation took off earlier this year. This is just the latest and false line they're using to advocate for their bill. But let's also use a little common sense that most Americans have. If we spend an extra $5 trillion, which will be the ultimate and real cost of the Democrats' bill, according to their own language, at a time when we still are forcing people out of their jobs because of these needless vaccine mandates, of course you're going to have more inflation if you spend more money and you produce less goods. Any American with common sense can tell you that. Joe Biden can trot out as many economists and college professors as he wants to say the contrary, but that brings to mind George Orwell's old line, only an intellectual could believe something so stupid.
Senator, let me get your reaction to this. Making headlines right now, Chuck Schumer says that he's targeting the week of December 13th to vote on the social spending bill. Let's see. He says that we had a good meeting with Senator Manchin today. We mainly talked about climate issues, and we're going to get the bill done with 50 Democrats before Christmas. That's our goal. Do you see that happening?
Well, it won't be good for the American people if it happens. I understand why Chuck Schumer wants to try to ram it through before Christmas, when most Americans are focused on dressing the tree and getting the presents, because this bill is so unpopular because it has contributed to the inflation that we've seen, and it's going to contribute to even more inflation. But they still have a lot of differences on their side of the Democratic Party. I mean, they're still fighting over now whether or not they're going to have hundreds of billions of dollars in tax cuts to rich mansion owners in California and New Jersey, or whether they're going to impose crushing new regulations on the coal and oil and gas industry. So they've got a lot of differences to work on their side before they can go to the floor with this bill.
So let me ask you just a question about that bill, Senator. There's a report in Politico that Republicans about the House and the Senate are looking at a potential plan to shut down the government so that you could try to get funding for enforcing vaccine mandates against the private sector out of the budget bills. Is that true? What can you tell us about that?
So, John, that's about the government funding bill, which is due up by this Friday, not the big reckless tax and spending bill. But the Democrats should at least allow us to have a vote on whether or not these vaccine mandates should be imposed by federal agencies like the Occupational Safe and Health Administration. That's beyond their statutory authority. It's beyond the constitutional authority of the federal government. It's deeply unpopular. Multiple federal judges have held that it's unconstitutional. The Democrats should at least allow us to have a vote on it, and they should go on record if they want to impose these onerous vaccine mandates on workers all across the country that are contributing to the supply chain shortages and the inflation that we see.
So let me see, can I pin you down on this? Is there a plan to potentially shut down the government, at least for a short period of time, in order to try to get that money for enforcing vaccine mandates out of the budget bill?
John, no Republican wants to see the government shut down this Friday. What we do want to see is the Democrats go on record and vote up or down whether or not they think these onerous vaccine mandates are an appropriate exercise of the bureaucratic state in Washington, D.C.
That being said, we are about to hear from Dr. Anthony Fauci. Is about to take to the podium there in the White House briefing room alongside Jen Psaki for her daily briefing. She's bringing him into that room. He'll take questions from reporters at a time where, as you just heard from President Biden, there is still anxiety in the workplace, particularly about returning with COVID. Obviously, there's a new strain that is causing new concern at this point, Senator. Do you believe that Dr. Anthony Fauci can bring calm to the current situation and the uncertainty around Omicron?
No, of course not, Sandra. Tony Fauci revealed himself long ago to be a partisan warrior, not a neutral public health expert. He has lost credibility as an impartial messenger about this virus. Joe Biden shouldn't have him out speaking in public about it. Frankly, he shouldn't be in a job, and he should be investigated for lying to Congress for what he did to fund dangerous and risky research in the Wuhan labs, which are likely the origin of this pandemic.
Senator, one quick question before we leave you. You're heading to New Hampshire this Friday to support Republicans who are standing for election next year's midterms. Could you disabuse us of any notion that this might be, on your part, an early look at 2024?
John, this is an early trip for 2022 where we have a competitive Senate race. We're going to pick up a seat in the U.S. Senate. And we're going to hopefully pick up 2 seats in the Congress in New Hampshire. So I'm looking forward to going up to support the Republican Party of New Hampshire and a lot of our great candidates running there.
Fair to say Senator, that's not a no, huh?
Not a no. All right, Senator, thanks for joining us. We'll see you at the grocery store.
Thank y'all.